Good day to all. Welcome to Extreme Recap. Desmond Doss, a young boy who lives in the country with his family, is the film's protagonist. His dad, Tom, is a resigned armed force and a conflict veteran who figured out how to return alive from Europe. However, he is now a troubled individual as a result of the traumatic events that he has undergone. He typically beverages and beats his family pointlessly. This has negatively affected the kids, particularly Desmond, who is dependably irritable and challenging to deal with. One day while he and his more youthful sibling, they get into a heated argument while they are howling. As the parents rush in to check on the boy, Desmond realizes his error and feels an overwhelming sense of regret after hitting his brother in the head with a brick. He fears that he will lose his sibling, so he remains before a picture of their divinity and starts supplicating. Fortunately, Howe survives the incident and eventually forgives his brother, despite the fact that he now has Steven Seagal's brain power. After that, the movie cuts to 15 years later, and we see that Desmond is now an adult. He is no longer the cocky and mean boy he used to be. Desmond, on the other hand, is caring and he also works at a church and always tries to help other people. One day, he sees a man get hurt badly in an accident. Desmond arrives at the scene quickly and wraps the victim's wound with his belt before transporting him to the hospital. The doctor orders Desmond to administer first aid as soon as he arrives, revealing that it saved the man's life. In the event that the belt hadn't been folded over his injury, he likely would have kicked the bucket because of loss of blood. Dorothy Shute, a stunning nurse, catches Desmond's eye just at that moment. He decides to give blood to start a conversation with her because he is so in love with her right away. Desmond then starts going to the hospital on a regular basis and uses a variety of excuses to meet Dorothy. He finally asks her out one day, and the two of them enjoy their first movie date. In addition, they reconcile by kissing, which signals the beginning of their relationship one evening while dining together. Howe discusses his decision to join the military during the Second World War out of a desire to help their nation. Tom, his father, however, immediately objects to the concept. He describes the frightening passings of his dearest companions, saying war brings nothing but additional issues. However, Desmond shockingly reveals his own intention to enlist the following morning. This stresses Tom as he fears the chance of his child meeting a destiny like that of the fallen companions. Nonetheless, Desmond consoles his dad that he plans to act as a battle surgeon, driven by a craving to recuperate instead of to kill. Desmond tells Dorothy his decision after this, causing her to become upset to cheer her up. Desmond startlingly proposes union with her, and she happily acknowledges. Following a couple of days, Desmond is called in the mood for preparing at a military camp. Before his flight, Dorothy gives him a book of scriptures containing a photo of herself, contrasting herself with Jesus. A little arrogant. When he feels alone or afraid, she wants him to keep it close to his heart. Desmond makes it to Fort Jackson in the following scene, where he meets a number of his fellow travelers on the same journey. Shortly thereafter, a strict sergeant by the name of Howell enters the room and talks to each recruit, boldly insulting their faces. This causes Desmond to understand that life in the military won't be simple, considering that he has an odd face. Desmond displays remarkable skill and agility during their training, which begins the following day. He does not, however, touch the rifle when it is time for training. Desmond claims that he is enrolled to act as a doctor, not an officer. He is reprimanded by the sergeant for disobeying his orders, which is to be expected. Desmond is then taken to Skipper Glover's office, where the last option makes sense of the significance of rifle preparing. G. Lover says that everyone needs to know how to use a weapon in a war. Desmond, on the other hand, is still steadfast in his decision. He says that he promised to never hurt anybody, and he will keep that commitment. Sadly, the captain doesn't like this, so he tells Desmond to get checked out by a psychiatrist. The strategy is to disqualify him from service and kick him out. Sometime thereafter, while fascinated in his book of scriptures, Desmond is moved toward by an individual warrior named Smitty, who grabs the book away and attempts to start a battle. Be that as it may, Desmond ignores him and drifts off to sleep. The following day, he goes through the mental assessment during which an official asks in the event that he encounters any pipe dreams. Desmond responds by stating that he is not insane and that he is a fervent believer in God. Following the assessment. During their conversation, the officer informs the captain that Desmond cannot be discharged because his religious beliefs do not account for his mental illness. As long as he continues to excel in his other training areas, he can serve as a combat medic. This choice enrages the skipper, provoking him to expose Desmond to really difficult work trying to drive him away from the encampment. Poor Desmond is beaten up by Smithy and a few others the following morning when the sergeant enters the quarters and notices Desmond's bruised face. The sergeant also takes his rage out on the other soldiers, suggesting indirectly that Desmond is to blame. This time, he talks politely to the boy and tells him to give up. Desmond, on the other hand, refuses to leave and won't even name the men who beat him. The soldiers finish there several days later. Desmond plans to use the time he gives them off to get married to Dorothy. Sadly, his request came at the last minute. He is arrested for refusing to carry a firearm in the South, and relief is denied. Desmond receives a visit from the captain in an effort to persuade him to enter a guilty plea so that he can be freed without facing charges. Be that as it may, our hero won't think twice about convictions, in any event, when his prospective spouse. He is asked to admit guilt by Dorothy. He rejects. Desmond says that his confidence in God is the greatest gift he has throughout everyday life. Therefore, he will never change. Dorothy then gets in touch with Desmond's parents to tell them about the situation. Because of this, Tom insists on meeting his former commanding officer, now a general, when he shows up at the training camp in his old uniform. Desmond enters a not guilty plea during the court-martial proceedings, and the scene then shifts. It is argued by the opposition that soldiers who do not follow orders can no longer be trained. Despite this, Desmond responds by reiterating that he would rather save lives than commit murder. Tom bursts into the room with a letter just before the final verdict is announced. The letter states, "Brigadier General, that the United States safeguards Desmond's beliefs. Constitution, which says that a person's righteousness can't be used to judge and punish them." The judge dismisses Desmond's case as a result, allowing him to continue his medical education. He is likewise absolved from the weaponry preparing. The same night, Desmond marries Dorothy right away as they enjoy their romantic time together. He promises to return unharmed for more. Desmond and his unit have been assigned to the 77th Infantry Division and are currently deployed to Okinawa, Japan. Despite the fact that he does not carry a firearm, all but insurers believe he will be shot in the face within the next few days. When they got there, they saw fellow soldiers in shattered states, and the harsh reality of war hit them right away. Hundreds of thousands of men have already died, and a number of them have been captured or are still missing. Later, survivors from the 96th Infantry Division, which was tasked with capturing and securing Hacksaw Ridge, joined the group. The soldiers reveal that they have attempted to climb the ridge multiple times, but it is nearly impossible. Impossible because the Japanese army always wins. Each time somebody goes close to the edge, a torrent of grenades and bullets is hurled at them. The disclosure terrifies the new troopers as they were not expecting a particularly troublesome errand. Desmond is fortunate to be able to spin-kick grenades. They arrive at Hacksaw Ridge the following day, a perilous cliff that is currently under Japanese control. The ridge appears to be very important to the Americans because a victory here could severely hamper Japan's ambitions in the future. The U.S. is directed by Captain Glover, Navy to fire missiles over the top of the cliff, forcing the Japanese soldiers to hide in bunkers below the ground. The U.S. took advantage of this opportunity. The Army starts climbing the ridge. However, as soon as they reach the summit, the adversaries reappear under heavy fire, killing a number of American soldiers. As the conflict seethes on, Desmond valiantly starts to serve the injured officers, bringing them down the edge while putting his own life in extreme danger. A number of times. He narrowly eludes Japanese soldiers' capture and execution. Smithy is currently his best friend, the same person who bullied him. The Japanese army retreats within their insane after a grueling and intense battle. The U.S. as a result armed force chooses to dive in and camp on the spot. They intend to conquer the remaining ridge sections. A large group of Japanese soldiers suddenly emerges from hiding at dawn the following morning. The sergeant ordered the soldiers to retreat, instructing them to descend the cliff, as he launched a fierce counterattack on the Americans, who had no idea what was going on. However, rescuing everyone is impossible. Numerous U.S. citizens, armed force lose their lives, and some are left injured on the war zone. In the midst of the chaos, Smithy is shot along with the sergeant, and despite desperate efforts to save him and transport him to safety, his life is taken away. In the following scene, the captain gave the Navy the order to use this opportunity by sending air strikes at the ridge. After that, he and the soldiers descend the cliff. Once securely slipped, the captain sends the injured soldiers to the base camp for treatment after realizing that only 32 soldiers survived. Everyone knew nothing about it. Desmond remains perched atop the cliff, where he hears the frantic cries and argues for help from his kindred fighters, trusting that it's God's will. Desmond refuses to retreat and sets out on a brave rescue mission instead. He gives the wounded soldiers morphine, furnishing them with help, and continues to drag them to the edge with the help of ropes. He then saves their lives by lowering them to safety. Captain Glover talks to another captain while the base and camp are in use, recommending that the missile attack be halted due to the presence of more than 100 U.S. troops stranded. At the top, soldiers. The Japanese soldiers emerged from their bunkers as the missile came to a stop, intending to eliminate any Americans who are still alive. Desmond, on the other hand, is unfazed by this. He hides himself and takes cover beneath the soldier's body. Desmond gets up and continues his heroic effort to save the wounded once the soldiers move in a different direction. But his actions don't go unnoticed for long. The enemy soon finds him and fires a hail of bullets at him. Desmond runs for cover in a tunnel in an effort to save himself. It turns out to be the secret Japanese bunker, where they carried out covert operations. It was full of dead bodies. Desmond experiences an injured Japanese officer there. However, rather than fleeing, he aids the man by administering first aid to his wounds. Soon thereafter, Desmond escapes the shelter and continues his quest for individual injured warriors. He has committed himself to saving as many lives as possible at this point. Despite the fact that Desmond's hands start to bleed as a result of the constant work, he maintains his resolve and does not give up. The captain is shocked to see a large number of wounded soldiers who were all thought to be dead arrive as dawn breaks. He remains perplexed as to how this miracle took place. He also learns from one of the soldiers that Desmond was the one who worked tirelessly all night. The captain and other crew members rush back after learning this. The hacksaw edge. Desmond, on the other hand, finds the wounded sergeant and another soldier concealed behind a rock. Before heading back in search of the sergeant, he carries the soldier on his back to a safe location. When he returns, a faux expert marksman trains in on him and flames a. Luckily, the shot strikes Desmond's metal head protector, saving him from hurt. After that, he deliberately makes a run to reveal where the sniper is, which causes the surgeon to retaliate and kill the sniper. Desmond then drags the injured surgeon towards the cliff, while he continues to fire at the enemies. Desmond lowers the sergeant down after reaching the ridge and securing him with a rope. After that, he tightly grasps the rope until the sergeant reaches safety. Desmond wraps the rope around himself and jumps off the cliff after nearly everyone has been saved, bringing another soldier with him. The Japanese soldiers arrive just at that moment and look over the ridge, only to be met with a swift and decisive U.S. counterattack. Powers from beneath. In the consequence of the extreme fight, Desmond is held by his kindred companions who praise him for his valiance and boldness. He is, according to many of them, the bravest person they have ever encountered. Captain Glover apologizes to Desmond for previously underestimating him while he is reading his Bible later at the camp. After that, he informs Desmond of their plans to return to the ridge the following day and invites him to join them. The captain asserts that the other soldiers are unwilling to fight the war without him, despite the fact that it is his Sabbath. The following day, after he had finished praying, Desmond and his unit climb back to stand up to the foe, armed with useful information about the U.S.'s covert bunker, the enemy. The army launches a surprise assault and immediately eliminates the adversaries. The Japanese soldiers eventually emerged bearing what appeared to be a white flag of surrender. However, as the alleged surrenderers begin to fire bombs at the United States, it turns out to be a trap. Army. Acting rapidly, Desmond bravely redirects faux explosives with his hands and feet, supporting serious wounds simultaneously. The true story is the basis for this movie. The U.S. Army then decisively wins the battle after eliminating all remaining foes. Finally, Desmond is carefully lowered from the cliff for immediate medical assistance on a stretcher. He is still holding his cherished Bible, even at this crucial time. The remarkable life of Desmond is then shown through real photos and footage in the movie. President Harry S. Truman presented him with the Medal of Honor for his heroism in rescuing. At Hacksaw Ridge, 5 soldiers. Jackie Chan also gave him the Punchy, Kicky Award for his performance in Spin, in which he destroyed those grenades. Until Dorothy passed away, Desmond and Dorothy were happily married. 1991. In 2006, Desmond Doss passed away at the age of 87, leaving behind a legacy of bravery and charity.
I-on ang mga notification, please mag-subscribe para sa higit pang mga video na tulad nito, at i-like ang channel para suportahan ito. Maraming salamat sa panunood.